Hello, I'm Suzanne Smith. The Florida Book Awards gave their 2014 Silver Award for Visual Arts to the beautiful work titled Everglades, America's Wetland. Author and photographer Max Stone not only captures some amazing photos of this ecological wonder, but it also provides a knowledgeable framework to better understand this unique world. He joins us to talk about his work. Thank you very much for being here today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Which came first for you, an interest in photography or an interest in nature?
They came sort of at the same time. Growing up in Gainesville, Florida, I would always go out and just explore what I had around my front doorstep, and I wanted to share that with people, especially my friends back at home, you know, who said, "No, I'm bored, there's nothing to do here." And so I'd say, "Yeah, well, check this out, look what I'm finding." And so they kind of happened at the same time. You know, one, photography really kind of emerging as this proof of life almost, you know.
How did you realize that you could actually create a career out of these two things together instead of just sharing it with your friends?
I guess I'd attribute that to the community that I grew up in. You know, everybody was always so supportive of what I was doing, not just in terms of, oh, these are pretty pictures, but in terms that these can be vehicles for change. So as I was taking photos of Gainesville, as it was changing and exploding and getting bigger and bigger, we used a lot of these images to help advocate on behalf of conservation projects and land acquisition. And so I thought that it just had a niche and it had a purpose, and it felt good to do it.
In this book you focus on the Everglades. Where else in the world have you focused some of your conservation work on?
I recently just got back from an assignment in South Africa on behalf of the Save Our Seas Foundation. I worked in Honduras and Guatemala with Guaruma and Photo Kids. I worked in Ecuador with the Wildlife Conservation Society. I've worked in many different places.
What is it about the Everglades that attracts you as a subject?
Oh gosh, the Everglades is so dynamic. You know, you have this kind of meeting of this modern unstoppable force of mankind and subtropical nature, and it's at that frontier, that very volatile and dynamic frontier, that you get so much interaction, and especially with subtropical nature, you know, alligators, crocodiles, dolphins, permit, tarpon, wood storks, spoonbills. I mean, it is like our, you know, Serengeti, and it's right here in Florida.
For you, did it start off as, I'm going to do a book about the Everglades, or did it start out on a different project and merged into this work?
It started out as me flying 800 feet in a helicopter with National Audubon Society as a field biologist and photographing the Everglades at sunrise from 800 feet, and me saying, wow, you know, this is unique. This is a different perspective I've never seen before. And then as soon as that first day was done, I realized this is a story that needs to be told.
There are, like you mentioned, there's a lot of dynamic aspects to the Everglades. How do you get in there to photograph some specific moments? Because like you said, there's a lot of different aspects, a lot of different animals. Do you have to plan every shot, or can you go in and just say, pretty much whatever I get is going to be good?
I wish it were like that. Oh gosh. You know, first you got to start off with getting your feet wet. That's a good place to start.
Literally with the Everglades, because there's so much water in the area.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, up to your waist most of the time. But a lot of the photos in the book are somewhat engineered. And I don't mean that in a post-processing computer kind of way, but in a way that they were planned and thought of and then executed months in advance. Take, for example, the snail kite on the cover. That was a month-long project to make that image. Talking with wildlife biologists, conceptualizing, actually drawing out the sketch of what I wanted to see in the frame on a piece of paper, and then trying desperately to make that happen in the field.
Well, you know, explain that. That was a very interesting story, and you talk about some of the stories of how you go about getting these pictures in the book. You had to use the apple snails and putting them out there for the kites to come in, the snail kites, which are the birds. How did the first time you went out there, it didn't work out so well, did it?
No, it didn't work. It didn't work for the first 8 days that I was out there. And it's easy to get really discouraged, and you think it's not going to work, and you just want to give up. But you start learning as you're watching these birds. You start learning their behaviors. You watch them fly in these different flight lines, and you watch where they're coming from and how frequently they come. And eventually, I like to say I got really lucky. Of course, it took a lot of planning to get really lucky. But actually the first time that it actually worked, I had 6 snails in this trap in this submerged platform, and the kites nailed them all. And I'm sitting there in the golden light, freaking out that I'd finally made the photo I've been dreaming about. And I go and I retrieve my camera and I hit play, and not a single photo was taken. Not one. And so, but I knew that it worked. And I didn't sleep a wink that night because I was so anxious about coming back the next morning and doing it all again. But I spent the next 4 days perfecting those photos.
How close are you to the creatures, whether it's the birds, or you've got some really close pictures of alligators and some other creatures I probably would not want to be that close to, or at least what it seems like. How close do you get to them?
It just depends on the image. We use a mix of lenses, long lenses to be far away, and a lot of my style relies on this very close, in-your-face, wide-angle perspective to show the habitat. And a lot of the times I use wireless triggers, so I'm not actually there. I put it in a custom hide to hide the camera away from the wildlife to get those almost impossible-looking perspectives. But I also work very closely with wildlife biologists and different agencies to make sure that I'm permitted to photograph what I photograph. So it gives you this access into these areas, into these perspectives of wildlife you wouldn't get otherwise.
How long did it take you to assemble this book and all the photographs and picking the best ones? Because I imagine it's very hard to pick your favorite of some of these.
Oh yeah, they're all my children. It was a 5-year project, from start to submission to the publishing company, to UPF. 5-year project. So I have over 100,000 images from the Everglades in that time.
That's
frame.
all?
Yeah, that's it. Right. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, the hard part was picking them, but the book explores the watershed, starting from Lake Okeechobee all the way down to Florida Bay. So as you turn the page, instead of chapters, you follow that water moving southward. So that in itself gave me a framework from which to choose photos. And as you learn stories about the Everglades, you learn which ones you want to tell. The alligators, the architects of the Everglades, or the roseate spoonbills, the pink canary in the coal mine. Different stories that serve as ambassadors, that serve as these contained narratives within this watershed.
What do you want people to take away from reading this book? Is it just knowledge about Florida and the Everglades, or is it something bigger?
No, I want them to fall in love. I want them to be proud. The Everglades is a world-class treasure, and it's right here in our backyards. And we should be inspired to go out there and live it, and to taste it, and to feel it between our toes and under our fingernails, right? So I want people to not only fall in love with it, but then I want them to care about it, and I want them to then advocate for it too, because it's an important piece of our natural and our cultural heritage.
What are you working on right now?
Right now I'm working on several different stories. Now that the book is completed, I'm working on different stories that kind of comprise of a much bigger narrative about our relationship to swamps and wetlands in the southeastern United States. A lot of what we've done to the Everglades and why we don't have these old-growth swamps anymore is because of this social disconnect, that we think swamps are bad or scary or spooky or dangerous. And so we've paved over them, we've drained them, and we've been just historically disconnected from them. So I'm trying to get people proud of their Southern heritage again.
You'd mentioned that all the photographs in there are your children. Do you have a favorite child in there, or is it just the whole book?
It would have to put on earmuffs if I told you that. No, I don't have any favorites. My favorites are always my most recent photos, because they're fresh and they're new to me. I mean, the snail kite image for me is my crown jewel, because it was one of those things that I had dreamed about for so long, and it actually came to fruition. See, a lot of these ideas don't actually happen. They don't succeed because either they're just impossible to get, or the moments never quite align. But when they do, it sure feels good.
Thank you very much for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
The Florida Book Awards are presented annually to recognize, honor, and celebrate the best Florida literature. The program is coordinated by the Florida State University Libraries and co-sponsored by these groups that promote books by and for all Floridians.